Hey, welcome to FreightWaves NOW, Thursday edition. Great to have you aboard. Thanks for joining the train. The freight train must go on no matter what happens. Today, what is happening is we are talking some economy. We are talking what is happening with housing and the mixed bag, often as it is with the construction segment, and also making his inaugural debut. Yes, I know that's redundant, but it's so exciting that we are bringing on Henry Byers, all 6'8" of him. He is going to be talking to us about freight forwarding, what is happening on those international waters. So stay tuned for that exciting development. Right now, speaking of developments, we are going here at Freight Alley, where a lot is going on, by the way. So please excuse the kind of ambient noise behind us. But, a lot is happening. We're very excited and we can barely hide it. Developing situations right here. Nick, Austin, what is happening in Austin and elsewhere around our fair land?
Well, we had severe storms across parts of the South yesterday and also last night, East Texas, parts of northern Louisiana. There was damage at Louisiana Tech University from a likely tornado. There was another tornado spotted near Texas A&M University.
You tried to warn them.
Yeah, not widespread, but these are kind of isolated tornadoes, but they did do damage in some populated areas. Today, that's all kind of shifting eastward. There have been more severe storms today, and there will be more tonight across parts of the Deep South. Areas like New Orleans, drivers will have to watch out going through Jackson, Mississippi, maybe up towards Montgomery, Birmingham, Alabama. And then especially overnight, any overnight drivers have to go through Western Florida, Pensacola, maybe over towards Tallahassee, Dothan, Alabama, all those areas. Again, not all those spots will get hit by severe storms, but it's possible. They're kind of all in that bubble because the storms are going to be kind of scattered. It's not going to be everywhere, but they're in that bubble.
So the general population should hunker down and be careful. Drivers should
I would say so.
Keep a weather eye out.
Yeah, because the winds could get gusty all of a sudden. The rain could become torrential all of a sudden. That'll slow you down, kind of take them by surprise. I-20, I-10 corridors, really the ones that are mainly going to be affected. So now we'll look at road conditions. A great feature on sonar.
I love it when you look at road conditions, yes. Nick. Blue, it's not ice, right? We're no longer looking at ice.
No, which is good. Not a lot of snow or ice for sure, but roads turning blue, a lot of the interstates turning blue here on the road conditions product from all the heavy rain and the storms that are moving through the south.
It means wet.
That's really not many other parts of the country are going to see major precipitation today as far as heavy rain, certainly not any heavy snow. However, there are a couple other concerns up in the Dakotas, especially along the I-94 corridor in North Dakota today. High winds. We're not talking about winds that can necessarily blow over loaded trucks, but deadheading along I-94, crosswinds will be a concern for anyone deadheading through North Dakota. Winds up to about 45 miles per hour as far as the gusts today. So they'll have to watch out for that. And drivers need to be careful out west too. We're going to see a more unusually hot weather for this time of the year out in parts of California, the desert Southwest from Phoenix over into Southern California, the Las Vegas area. Temperatures from the mid-90s to just above 100 degrees. So along I-15, the I-40 corridors out in that area, drivers definitely want to take their breaks indoors, find nice cool spots when they're taking their breaks. And if you do get stuck outside for any period of time, you want to make sure, I know it sounds kind of silly, but have sunscreen on, drink plenty of water. Even if you don't feel thirsty, you want to drink plenty of water because, yeah, it gets hot in the desert, right? But even for this time of the year, the temperatures will be a lot warmer than normal.
Thanks for that, Nick Austin. That was some fantastic stuff. It's always great to have your chief meteorologist in the house to give you a lay of the land of everything that's going on. Speaking of a lay of the land of everything that's going on in the economy, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Smith, welcome.
Hi, Chad.
Hey, it's great to have you here. What do we got pulled up?
Great to be here. Today we have the Home Purchase Sentiment Index. And this is something a little bit different than last time when we looked at housing construction, when we looked at housing starts. Housing starts gives us a little bit more of a picture on the supply side. Now we're looking at what the demand side of things are looking like. And we also have retail sales of furniture and similar goods overlaid on top of that.
That seems like a funny comparison.
It is. And one of the things that's really not so intuitive when looking at the demand side of things is how it really relates to freight. When we think of housing starts, we think of, okay, these are building materials that need to get moved to these new construction projects that are breaking ground, but how does it really relate to the retail sales of actual goods being transported throughout the U.S.?
Okay, and as we know, and you've reminded us, the consumer spending makes up 2/3 of the GDP.
Correct.
Okay.
So consumer is really the kingpin of the economy, and really that's going to relate strongly to freight movement throughout the country. When we're seeing consumers feeling confident, we see it that it's been reflected in this recent movement up in March for the home purchase sentiment index. And we see that consumers are feeling more confident about the economy, feeling like this is a good time to make a purchase. And with that, they also feel confident with buying more goods.
They do, and so you've pulled up a very long amount of time. So this right here spans like the better part of a year.
Correct.
So boy, we were on a downward trend, and this is very optimistic news, it seems to me.
It is. And so it kind of goes off of that mixed bag that we were talking about earlier. We see that the most recent, yes, and we see that the most recent sales numbers for home sales were also up not too long ago this week. And so this is really a good sign that there is some pent-up demand, although we're not seeing it in starts. A lot of that's going to have to do with so many of the mounting weather events that we see, from flooding in the Midwest and things happening in the West Coast. So there's a lot to be optimistic of. Although this is just 1 month of movement, it's a step in the right direction overall.
There were a lot of headwinds that might have been suppressing this housing activity, but is this expected to some extent regardless? Is it a seasonality thing of sorts?
It's definitely a seasonality thing when we're looking at starts. It's really popular for starts to ramp up during the spring month. And so when we're looking at demand and the sentiment, sometimes that's not so seasonal. And what we're really optimistic is seeing that demand is moving upwards, and that's always a great thing to see, whether it's with homes, big ticket purchases, or any type of goods that the U.S. consumer is spending their money on that needs to be transported on by freight.
Yes, the U.S. consumer is spending money. Thanks for that, Anthony Smith. And now, Henry Byers. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Chad?
Great.
Super excited to be here, make my debut.
It is. It's great to have you here, and we are going to be looking at you cover for us freight forwarding, but also just international trade, hitting on maritime. It's great to have you on the team. What do you got cooking for us?
Well, first, Chad, do you know what next week marks for major U.S. importers?
I don't. What?
Well, May 1st marks the start of what is better known as contract season for international shippers. Better yet, U.S. importers. So on May 1st will be the start of the 2019 to 2020 contract season. So it'll run from May 1st all the way to April 30th, 2020. And I wanted to talk about that and how it relates to the FreightWaves Baltic Index, which is spot pricing from China to the U.S. for a 40-foot container to both the West Coast and the East Coast. Now, as we know from how you guys have kind of talked, obviously discussed before, last year was an abnormal year with the tariff pull forward. A lot of U.S. importers getting their goods in prior to what they thought were going to be tariffs.
Right.
But once you see the tariffs were announced as getting delayed until March, and then as we know, they're hopefully going to reach a trade deal soon. Those rates quickly declined, then again spiking prior to Chinese New Year, where most suppliers in China take about 2 weeks, 3 weeks off. So really everything stops. U.S. importers can't get their goods loaded on any ships during that time. And we had a gradual decline all the way through April 1st. And then it hopped back up, and that's showing a little bit that demand is rising, increasing there, and setting the pace for what's contract season.
Okay, so the volatility is really dictated by the sensitivity to the tariffs. Is that the volatility we've been seeing overall?
It absolutely was. It was just amplified. As you can see, this dip is very indicative of what happened. This was an enormous retail season. 2018 was already set to be a record year for importers, but it was amplified there on the back end with that tariff pull forward, as U.S. importers were saying, we need to get as many goods into the United States, which we then see it play out in the truckload market with volume staying high.
May I ask this question? Like, are shippers, and I hate to speak in terrible generalities, but are they as savvy as other parts of the supply chain? Is it too much of a reaction to try to get ahead of tariffs that may or may not even come, and then build up maybe more inventory than demand might even ask for, and then have to pay for the warehousing? It just seems like.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair question. I do think a lot of people in the supply chain are very, very intelligent people, have been doing this for a long time. Right. It's really one of those things where you're looking at potentially getting significant tariff increases on your goods, and that has enormous impacts on the bottom line. And I think their thought process was, is this really going to happen? Is it not? You can't really risk it in this case. There was someone that was quoted recently as saying, we have no choice, we have to bring it in. So just like in China, we had that trade dispute, and it played out in a significant volume increase. We're also seeing that play out in Europe as well. So I'd like to show you exactly what's happening there. So the Freightos Baltic Index is neat because it doesn't just cover one trade lane. We were just looking at the Trans-Pacific eastbound, which is of course China, Southeast Asia to US. Yes. Now we're going to be looking at the transatlantic westbound. So this is pricing from Europe to North American East Coast. So this is going to be your Rotterdams, Bremerhavens to your New Yorks, Savannahs, Charlestons. This is a good benchmark for where these rates are. And a couple of things I wanted to point out. If you pull that out even further, you'd see that rates were staying super stagnant for really the better part of 2017, 2018. But as we move into 2019, you're seeing significant volatility. And I think that's directly attributed to the fact that Trump is now turning he's got his eyes on the European Union as far as levying tariff increases, okay. And you're seeing a similar reaction here. Now, it's a little too early to call that, and say that's a definitive, market indicator, but I think it's safe to say that volumes are increasing relative to almost the announcements that he's made and as they've come out in the news.
Well, and as I'm looking over here, which you've taken us back through, just into 2018. Boy, that is a gigantic jump, isn't
Absolutely.
it? That
Absolutely.
is very significant.
And you have so much volatility in the Trans-Pacific eastbound because of just the significant amount of volumes traveling on that lane. U.S. importers, Walmarts, Targets, they dictate an enormous amount of overall volume and market share within the container shipping industry.
Thank you. Fantastic analysis. Very interesting stuff from both of our cooks in the kitchen today. It's like we have been saying that we're anticipating an uptick in some good news in what was a somewhat soft beginning of our year. And some of this stuff is seasonality, some of it's not. Some of it is just like the tariff thing, getting ahead of that, heating up our 2019 look is to me, this is going to be an interesting second quarter going into the third quarter, an interesting uptick in the spring heading into the summer. This is what we are bringing to you each and every day. What is happening right now as we anticipate freight conditions overall. We are an independent source, and we look at it from every different angle. We don't have any given agendas other than following what the data is telling us and trying to analyze that and describe it for our viewers. And again, each and every business day we come out at 4 o'clock. And of course, we're all over social media, and we're really wanting to share that love, so we'd love to see you there. We'd also love to see you at Transparency 19, which is just around the corner. I believe it's exactly 10 days away, May 6th through 8th at the Georgia International Convention Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And we've got so many different people. There's relationships, there's networking to develop, there's things to learn. It is hot. It is going to stimulate you mentally and emotionally. So in the meantime, you guys stay safe out there, and don't worry, be happy.